Accidents can change your life in an instant. If you've been hurt from an accident, you probably have a lot of questions about how much is my case worth? How long will my case take? Do I even have a case? Hi, I'm Javier Tore. I'm a personal injury attorney here in Arizona. And in this video, I'm going to take you through the 10 most common questions people ask when they have a potential personal injury case. I will go through all the steps of the process, how the process works, and how lawyers like me can help you protect your interests and make sure the insurance company pays you what you deserve. And if you stay with me till the end, I will tell you how you can download a free copy of my Arizona Personal Injury Case Survival Guide. Let's get on with the video. First of all, what is a personal injury case? Well, personal injury case basically means, I guess the name is kind of self-explanatory, right? Your person was injured, right? But why is it a case? Well, basically it's a civil lawsuit, right? Because somebody negligently caused another person injuries or other damages, right? But usually we concentrate on personal injuries because those are the more severe, right? So if somebody causes you an injury, some kind of problem with your health, it doesn't have to be like a direct, a gash or something, but some kind of injury that is an actual provable fact on your person, even if it's not necessarily physical but mental, you could potentially have a case and sue for damages, right? So it just depends on a lot of factors, and I'm going to try and kind of explain a little bit for you. So one of the first questions that I get asked is, do I have a case? The favorite answer for every lawyer is, it depends, right? We love that answer. But it is true, because the fact that you were injured, it's not enough for me to know if you have a case, right? So first of all, do you have an injury? Yes. Okay. Now, how were you injured, right? So we need to know the cause of the injury. So if you dropped something on your toe and you broke your toe, well, probably you don't have a case because you're not going to sue yourself, right? So it's got to be one person causing another some form of physical injury. Now, that injury also has to be caused because of the other person's negligence. What does that mean? They were careless. The legal definition of negligence is a duty, a breach of a duty, and damages, causation and damages, right? So I have a duty to not hurt you, right? Simply speaking, and I breached that duty, and that breach of that duty to not cause you harm, right? Caused you harm. Then I was negligent, I'm at fault. That's another term we like to use, fault. And I caused you this injury, which potentially caused you some monetary and non-monetary damages, right? So let me give you a classic example of a personal injury case. You're at a stoplight, you're stopping red, and all of a sudden you're just minding your own business and boom, somebody just smacks the rear of your vehicle, right? Rear ends you. And your vehicle goes all over the place, it gets smashed, and you go all over the place. You got, whiplash and other injuries. You hit your head on inside the vehicle. You're basically thrown around the cabin of your vehicle, right? So more than likely, that person who hit you is at fault. They were negligent. They have a duty to control the speed of their vehicle to avoid an accident. They have a duty to drive in a safe manner and respect other drivers. And we all, when we drive, have a duty to, if a vehicle is stopped in front of us, safely stop to avoid colliding with that vehicle. So if that person hits you, well, right? Unless, for example, they say, no, somebody hit me and I hit you, but I didn't do it, right? But let's assume right now that that's what it is, right? So that person was just distracted and boom, hit you. Well, more than likely that person was negligent and you probably have a case so long as you have some damages, right? Because if you have no damages, well, you can sue them, but what are you going to get? Remember, as good as the American legal system is, we cannot give you pure justice, right? The American legal system, in its wisdom, cannot undo what has been done. So if somebody hits you and you break your neck or whatever, they cannot unbreak your neck, but they can make you somewhat whole for your damages. And that's the whole point of tort law. That is the whole point of personal injury cases in general. The person, by their fault, caused you an injury that they have to redress. They have to repair to the best of their ability, because clearly they cannot uninjure you, right? That's what basically, in a nutshell, what a personal injury case is. So do you have a personal injury case? Do you have a case? Well, if somebody hit you and that person was at fault, okay, and you suffer damages, such as you got medical bills, you got pain and suffering, you missed some work, all that stuff, those are damages that you can potentially claim when you present your personal injury claim. How much is my case worth? Once again, my favorite answer, all lawyers have favorite answer, it depends. Well, what does it depend? Well, it depends on the extent of your injuries and the seriousness of your injuries. The more severe the injury, the more your case is worth, right? So basically it's a direct relation into the severity of your injuries, right? So if you have a little speck on your cheek here like that, well, probably not a lot. But I mean, a case like the one I was discussing, when you get rear-ended. Whiplash injuries sometimes can be severe, sometimes can be mild, but there's some injury anyway. Usually you get an MRI, you'll see some herniations or some bulges or some stuff. There's some injury to your neck that causes pain, that requires some treatment, some physical therapy, maybe some shots or whatever. So all that is part of your damages, and the value of your case is very directly related to the amount of your damages. There are different types of damages. There are monetary and non-monetary damages. In a nutshell, monetary damages are anything that by itself is quantifiable in money, in a number of dollars, right? So the damages to your car, right? So whatever your car costs to repair, that's part of your damages. The loss of value of your vehicle is also part of your damages. The loss of use of the vehicle, that's another one of your damages. In a personal injury case, more specifically, your medical bills. Right? So let's say you got hit really bad and they actually had to use the jaws of life to cut you out of the vehicle, put you in a helicopter and fly you out to the nearest hospital to get treatment, right? The ambulance bill, the fire department bill, if there is one, right? The helicopter bill to get you to the hospital, the ER hospital bill, and all the doctor bills, all that, those are part of your monetary damages. Those are what we call your medical specials, right? Your medical special damages, right? Those are monetary damages because they're quantifiable in money, right? You got a bill from the hospital for $100,000, well, that's part of your damages. Those are monetary damages. So part of your claim would be whatever the hospital billed you. So let's say between ER and all the stuff that you had to do for 6 months or whatever to get better, you have a bill for $500,000. Well, that's what your case is worth. That doesn't mean you're going to collect $500,000, but that technically is the value of your case, plus other damages. There's also what we call non-economic damages or non-monetary. These are the ones that they cannot undo specifically because, you have to pay. They can reimburse you for your loss of money, but the pain, suffering, loss of enjoyment of life, loss of consortium, the loss of ability to enjoy your family, your spouse, all of that stuff. Those are non-monetary damages because we don't usually give a number to that, right? But in court, you are entitled when somebody causes you that. For example, how much would you take? Like usually I would ask a jury something to the effect when I'm trying to explain to them to quantify my client's non-economic damages, right? The pain and suffering costs, right? Well, first we present evidence of, all the damages, all the injuries that my client suffered. And then I go to the jury and say, well, ladies and gentlemen, now Mr. Smith was in pain for 6 months. It was excruciating pain. He couldn't move, right? He couldn't move his neck. He had a little neck brace for 3 or 4 of those months. And then he had to go through very painful shots, physical therapy, all that, right? So now all the pain he went through, right? The evidence presented, the doctors testify, whatever, and they say, well, how much would you charge him to take his pain away? Very hard to answer, right? Would you take $1? Would you take $1 million? How much? That's why we have juries. Juries need to quantify that. And it has to be reasonable, of course, but basically, how much? So one way we do it is like a per diem analysis, right? We do, and every day you're probably awake about 16 hours of the day, and let's assume you're in pain for 16 hours a day. Well, how much do we pay you per hour, right? That's not the only way to quantify these damages, but it's a way that people understand because we all go to work and we pay by the hour usually, right? So that's one of the ways to do it. But there's other ways of calculating damages, but not to get too far into the weeds. The value of your case is also affected by how much pain and suffering you can claim, right? And of course, the more you're in pain, the more you are able to claim, right? So clearly at the beginning of the injury, you have more pain than towards the end. And then also you have something called permanent physical injuries, some injuries that will never go away, right? Especially in whiplash cases, it's very common. They're better, they can go back to work or whatnot, but they're never gonna be the same, right? So sometimes we can present evidence, medical evidence that shows that the person has a permanent injury, right? So those online calculators and stuff that are out there, they really are more designed to, attract you and to kind of go and talk to somebody about it, because those calculators don't really address those. But you can potentially look at what your medical bills are, right? And maybe give a value to your hourly pain and stuff and kind of figure out where you are. But the best thing is to talk to a lawyer about it, right? You can give me a call, right? And you can figure out what the value of your claim is that way, right? A personal injury attorney's job is to make that determination and to not only to figure out what's a reasonable number, but how we can, present that in a way that an insurance company would pay it. Or if not, we'll go to court and have a jury award it to you. But that's not all, right? Because also a personal injury case is worth based on what you can get. Because if the person who hit you has no money, you're probably limited to the value of the insurance that's available to pay for your injuries. It depends. Favorite lawyer phrase, it depends. But there's bodily injury, right? So the minimum in Arizona is $25,000 per person. So basically $25,000 per person, $50 for the total incident, right? So if it's just you in the vehicle, you're the only person hurt, if that person has only $25,000 worth of insurance, that's all you're gonna get from the insurance company, right? So then you gotta figure out, well, do they have any more that they can pay me with, right? Most people don't, right? Most human beings are not gazillionaires, and that also affects the value of your claim, right? The actual injuries and damages you have and the ability of the other person to pay for it. Because I could get you a judgment for $100 million, but if the other person can't pay for it, all you can do with that judgment is put them in a frame and hang it up on the wall, right? That's all you can do. So another question I get asked a lot is, how long will it take my case to resolve? Well, again, it depends, right? But on average, every case, I know a personal injury case will take anywhere from 4 to 6 months. It just depends on the injuries and what treatment you got. Because sometimes I'm not going to go and make demands for you if you're still treating, right? If you're still not well, I'm not going to go and make a demand. Right? We need to figure out first where you are in your treatment and all that. But you do have a statute of limitations where you do need to file a complaint within 2 years of the injury. Otherwise, you can't sue anymore. So usually we wait a couple of months, at least 2 to 3 months for treatment, unless there's minimal injuries. Usually 2 to 3 months, we want you to get checked out. We want you to, get some evaluations, make sure, we take pictures of your injuries. How we do that? Well, clearly photographs of whatever scratches, right? Or outside evidence you have. But we also have things that are called x-rays and CT scans and MRIs, because they take pictures of the inside of your body to show the injuries that were caused by the incident. So how long it'll take? Anything from a few months to a couple years. It just depends on the injuries, right? And also, it depends on the value of the case, because sometimes people are they're really, really hurt. And it takes months for them to get out of the hospital, right? So we're not gonna rush that person. The main thing is, one of the things that you hire an attorney for in these cases is so that you can concentrate on your health, and I'll concentrate on the case, right? So you just keep me up to date, where you're going, how it's doing, how you're doing, stuff like that. I usually talk to my clients every month or so when they're self-treating and figure out where they are, and I'm dealing with the insurance company on the other side and stuff like that, right? What do I do next? Right? Other people is, okay, so I got hurt. What do I do? What do I do? Well, there's a bunch of things you can do, but the first thing you got to do is, let's say you got rear-ended. Okay, boom, right? So you're in shock. So first, chill, calm down, right? Make sure you're okay. Make sure everybody's safe, right? Make sure that whatever vehicle hit you, there's no other vehicles that are going to hit you, right? Move yourself, if you can, to a safe place. That's the first thing you got to do, be safe. And then if you're in the middle of the road or whatever, sometimes that's possible. I know, it just depends. But first of all, safety, right? Make sure you're safe, right? Make sure everybody else is safe, right? And then once you're okay and you're safe, figure out if the other driver's okay and safe. If somebody needs medical attention, make sure you call 911 and get everybody medical help, right? That's the first thing, right? Make sure everybody who needs help is getting it. Once that's done, then take photos of the scene, take photos of your vehicle, take photos of the other person's vehicle, take photos of the location, get the other person's information, call the police and make a police report. Okay, it's very important. You don't have to talk details and write a freaking book about it, but make sure they call the cops, make sure the cops come, take pictures, they usually do like a crash report and stuff. You want to get that, all that stuff, exchange information. Sometimes they won't do a crash report, interestingly enough, but they'll at least do like exchange of information slip that we have here in Arizona, so that at least you get that. So you get the other person's name, their contact information, their driver's license, you get their insurance information and stuff like that, and you give them your own, right? So that you can call your respective insurance companies and make a claim and all that, right? But once you're okay, once you're safe, get the information, exchange information, make sure it's safe, and go to a doctor, go get checked out. It's very important. Like I said, your health is the most important thing here. Yes, property damage it has value, but your health has a lot more value. So we want to make sure that you're okay. So go to the ER, go get checked out, make sure you're okay. If an ambulance comes and gets you, make sure they check you out, right? And if necessary, have them take you. It's okay. Your vehicle will be safe. It'll get towed. You can get it later. You are more important than the car, okay? So get that help. Go get it done, and go to the ER and make sure you get the treatment you need. If it's a very serious injuries, they'll just take you, right? If you're unconscious, they'll just take you. If not, the best thing you do is go. I've had clients that don't want to go, right? So sometimes they'll just go home, call somebody to drive you home if you can. If your car's not working, if your car can't go, they'll tow it anyway. Just get home, and as soon as you can, go to a doctor, get checked out. It's very important that you get medical treatment as soon as possible. Once you get that medical treatment, then before you talk to an insurance company, before you talk to insurance adjusters, call an attorney. You can call me, you can call somebody on one of my colleagues, call an attorney. Sometimes it helps to call a few and get compare consultations, right? But call an attorney, because when you talk to an insurance company, they record what you say. And I've seen many times where these adjusters are giving you bad information that is not good for your case. They're just kind of trying to put any claims you want to make, okay? So call an attorney. On a percentage attorney, what we do is we actually get all the other information from the incident, make sure you're getting treatment, and then we notify the insurance company, hey, insurance company, I represent Mr. Smith. Here's my information. Here, I want all this information from you on the policy and the coverage, right? Give me all this info, okay? And I'll keep you posted about his treatment, and we'll talk later. And that's what you want to do. You want to make sure you get all that information up first so that you're not making any admissions that might hurt your case later. Another question I've get a lot, and a lot of people ask, is how do legal fees work? Well, for the most part in the personal injury practice, it's based on recovery, right? A percentage of recovery. Different firms handle it differently. It depends on a lot of things. Again, it depends, right? But you're looking somewhere between 25 to 40% of recovery, right? So if you let's say you get $100, 25 to $40 go to the attorney. Now, there's also costs, right? So usually the costs on you. So let's say you get $100, you have $10 of medical bills, right? So you got to pay your attorney 40 or 35 or 25, and then you got to pay your medical bills out of that, right? So another 10. So let's say you paid 40 plus 10, you pay 50, so you keep the 50. That's a very simple way of putting it, but that's basically it. Your medical bills and the cost of litigation and all that come out of your share, right? And then you keep the rest. How long do I have to file a claim? Well, you shouldn't be filing a claim with an insurance company. You should have an attorney do so. But you basically have 2 years from the date of the accident to file a lawsuit. Okay? But if you're going to make a claim against somebody else's insurance, you want to make it sooner rather than later. But again, you should do it with the assistance of a counsel. Why? Because they record what you're saying. And you might just, not that you're lying or that you did anything wrong, but some things you should not be discussing with everybody. You should be discussing with your attorney, okay? Especially if you're talking to the other party's insurance, when the other party's at fault, that insurance adjuster might not have your best interest in mind, and the questions and admissions they might want to ask you may not be good. So just have somebody who knows what they're doing file that claim. So don't talk to them until you at least have had a consultation with an attorney first, right? If they call and say, oh yeah, sure. Look, I got to talk to my attorney first, and then I'll give you a call back. Please, and you can say, let's talk next week or whatever. Don't be mean, don't be rude. Just, you want to get some advice first, and it's fine. There's nothing wrong with doing that, okay? And then if you hire an attorney, he or she can, talk to them, say, hey, what you want with him, you want with me, what's up, dude, And you just have somebody represent you, because also, why do you need to be dealing with an insurance company, right? You need to get back to your life. You need to get back to your family. You need to get back to health. So you should concentrate on your health first and have your attorney file that claim for you and negotiate that settlement for you. Or take the case to trial if they don't want to pay you. Another question that I have a lot is, oh, the insurance company already offered me something. Should I take it? Again, it depends, but most of the time, if they offer you something while you're still treating, it's a lowball offer. They're trying to get the case resolved before. One of the things that you'll find is that most insurance companies, because in Arizona, I don't have to tell you the coverage that the other person have, but most insurance companies won't tell you what coverage there is. They just offer you like 10 grand or whatever to go away. But if your medical bills are $50,000, $60,000, why would you take $10,000? No. So usually you want to make an intelligent, informed decision when you're accepting an offer from an insurance company. So what you want to do is you want to know first, what are your damages? What are your injuries? How much money you need to pay for what you already done? And how much future medical expenses you'll have? Because sometimes, right, even though that you have 2 years to sue, your injuries will last you for years to come, maybe will be permanent. So you need to find out. That's why you need medical professionals to assess your injuries and determine where you are on those and how to deal with those. So you don't want to take the quickie offer up front. You want to make sure that you know what you're accepting and what rights you're giving away when you make that acceptance. Because if you take a settlement and then later you take 10 grand and later it turns out you need another 50 and you're already signed off, out of luck, there's no much more money that you can get. Another question I get asked a lot is, will my case go to trial? Once again, it depends, right? But what I can tell you is most cases settle without going to trial. But some cases resolve after filing a lawsuit before going to trial. And in my experience, usually, but not necessarily always, but usually, most of the time, if you file a lawsuit, you get more money than if you don't. That's not always the case. Don't be filing lawsuits without legal advice. But usually, in my experience, once you file a lawsuit, because you're dealing with other people at that point, right? Before you file a lawsuit, you're just dealing with an insurance adjuster who's putting information in a computer. He or she has certain processes that he or she needs to follow, and the computer will give that person a range of offerings, whatever, and that's what they're keeping, right? Whilst an attorney addresses other issues that the insurance adjuster doesn't really, in my experience, won't really care, right? I remember once I had this adjuster says, well, we don't accept claims for this or this is, we don't pay on that, right? My answer to that insurance adjuster was like, ma'am, you pay what the attorneys and people let you pay. The only control you have right now is because we're not in court. If you don't pay my client what he or she deserves, or what we believe he deserves, you'll pay whatever jury tells you to pay, okay? So remember, the insurance adjuster, insurance company are not there to help you, especially if they're the other person's attorney, adjusters, or the other person's insurance. They're there to make a buck, right? The insurance companies are there for profit. So the less they pay you, the better for them, right? When you're negotiating with an insurance company, the best thing you can do is have somebody that knows what they're doing represent you. Another question I get a lot, and it's a very good question, is, what if I was at fault too? What if I did some mistakes? Well, we have a shared fault, comparative negligence in Arizona, which basically means if we go to trial, a jury will decide who's at fault and at what percentages, right? So let's say you're 50-50 at fault, well, that person has to pay you half your damages, right? Or let's say you're 10% at fault, well, that person has to pay you 90% of your damages, right? They'll pay whatever percentage the jury gives them, right? It happens at trial. And when we negotiate with insurance companies, they will also say, well, we believe that your client has some faults, we acknowledge that your claim damages are 100, right? But he's at fault 15%, so we'll give you 85% of the value of his claim, right? Something to that effect, right? So it kind of depends on what the facts are and why you are or not at fault, and partially or at all. So it depends, but you can still get a percentage of your total damages. The most important thing is, don't assume that you are completely at fault, right? Have somebody who knows how to handle these things review those, right? Another question I have is, well, I didn't go to the doctor right away because I wasn't in pain, but later I started feeling. It's common that, after an accident, you don't feel it right away, especially, you're hyped up on adrenaline and stuff, but eventually you will. So the important thing is to, as soon as you start feeling some discomfort, you should go. I mean, my advice, go right after to get checked out, because if you're not in pain, but go get a doctor tell you you're good, right? Or say, hey, you got some injuries here. If you're not feeling it, you need to watch this and that, wear this neck brace for a few days to see, something to that effect. That's what the best thing is, to just go get checked out to make sure you're okay. It gives you better documentation for your case, and it gives you peace of mind, and you're addressing your health, which is the main goal here, right? So it's common that you don't feel it immediately, right? Especially you're all hyped up on adrenaline and the survival instinct of fight or flight. The less thing you're worried about is my neck hurts, or it's tight, or like, my back, I can't move that. Right now, you're like, you're in fight or flight, but you need to survive, right? So your body won't tell you you're in pain until your body feels like, okay, now I'm safe. And then all of a sudden, boom, the pain hits you. I have many cases where my clients have had that issue, where they get home and they're like, oh shit, now I'm in pain. What's going on? It's that your body says, okay, now I'm safe. Now I'm gonna let this guy know dude, you got hurt. Because first your body's just telling you, dude, get to safety. And then you're saying, you got hurt, fix it, right? So it's normal, but insurance companies love to argue that, you're making it up because, it took you 10 minutes to go to the doctor, right? They call that the gap in care, right? There's a gap between the accident and you seeking medical advice or medical treatment. So that's why you should always go to the doctor, get checked out. But the longer you wait, it will affect your case. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because if you go to trial, what they usually do is like, hey, Mr. Smith said he's in excruciating pain, but he never went to the doctor until he hired a lawyer. He waited a month to go to the doctor. So was he really in pain? Or is him and his lawyer trying to come up with these numbers just to hustle the insurance company for some money, right? So that's bullshit, right? Because people have lives that have to deal with, right? And sometimes it's not practical, but it's always advisable, go to the doctor right away, get some imaging done, make sure you're okay, make sure they give you whatever medication you need, make sure you get everything addressed ahead of time. So those are the 10 most common questions I get asked about in personal injury cases. I know it can feel overwhelming at times, but the good news is you don't have to do it alone. And you don't have to pay up front for these things, right? Most personal injury attorneys will help you out on contingency basis. Basically, we'll get a percentage of whatever we get for you. So it doesn't hurt to get a free consultation, get a free case evaluation. You can call your attorney, an attorney, and get that. If you want to give me a call, give me a call. Contact information is down below, right? But you could always hire an attorney, have that person figure it out, and concentrate on your health, okay? Now, like I promised you at the beginning, if you stayed until the end of the video, I give you access to my Arizona personal injury case survival guide. You'll find the link down below. You just click on it, you can download it as a PDF, and just kind of gives you the steps that you need to follow. And if you want to call us to help you out with your case, we'll be happy to help you out, right? I hope you found this video helpful. If you or any of your loved ones had an accident in Arizona and needs some help dealing with an insurance company, give me a call. We'll give you a free case evaluation. We'll figure out your case, see if the right fit, and we'll see how we can help you, see if we can get you the compensation you deserve. Right? Give us a call, okay? And stay safe out there, guys.